Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Horsemanship Remark Show. It is the last Thursday show in July 2023, and I'm super freaking excited because I'm out here adventure hunting in Eastern Oregon, where I have been checking out the wild horses. So I'm really excited about that. Before we continue, wanted to let you guys know that this Sunday from 6 to 7, I'm doing the first Sunday special of the Horsemanship Remark Show, and Dr. Bill Barnes, Billy Money, will be on the show. We've been dying to get together and chit chat, and I have a bunch of other folks that really want to touch on, but of course I would never give up the Thursday show. So we'll do a Sunday special, probably the last Sunday of every month, and it'll be in the evening, so we'll see how that goes. Good morning, everybody. Jody, I thought about you yesterday. Jeannie, let's see. Oh my gosh, I don't know who else here. Debbie, you're awake. Oh my gosh, I was asleep in 2 seconds last night, so Debbie's here with me. She drove all day yesterday and showed me all the secret spots, which was just amazing. And then we got back last night. What time were we back, Debbie? Like 9 or 8:45 or something like that. And I don't know about you, but I was asleep right away. Super fun to be. Hold on, let's see if, here we go. I don't remember if I told him that I was going to go, because I didn't want to tell everybody and then for some reason have to work or something like that, and then not, and everyone be disappointed.
Good morning.
Morning.
This looks like a photo shoot from the mall.
Oh yeah. Did I tell you that I was out adventuring this week?
I didn't. Or you didn't.
Okay, because here's the thing. It was like a last minute deal that we could really pull this off. We were hoping to do it, but if it didn't happen like these 2 days, it probably wasn't going to happen at all. So I'm in Burns, Oregon. Well, really technically, like Hines and Burns are this little tiny little town. We're about 2.5 hours east and a tiny bit south, I think, from Bend. At least.
Are you looking at horses, the wild horses? Cool.
Which, you're so quiet. I don't like that. Here, I'm gonna turn you up. Can you guys hear me? You can hear me okay, right?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Just fine.
Okay, good. Good morning. I always feel there's a couple super cute bed and breakfasts out here, but I was like, I better not do that because I'm gonna be talking loud at 6:30 in the morning. So, hotel room it is. So, yes. So, Michael, first of all, do you have anything that you want to talk about? Because I probably could talk the whole show. I feel
Go
like
for it.
Okay. So, here's the thing. I've ridden Mustangs a good amount. I mean, Debbie was doing, when I met her in 2006, I guess. I had just gotten back from 6 weeks at Pirelli or something in Florida, and she had Mustangs and quite a litany of wild horses from out here. And in fact, one of her main Mustangs, Traveler, is from this area. Anyways, and of course, Easy the Mustang was a Mustang, but I haven't tamed anything. I haven't started anything. And I have never been out here to see them, and I've never seen the corrals. So there's two things out here. There's a couple different HMAs, like pretty close, herd management areas, for those of you guys that haven't heard that term. So this is BLM land, Bureau of Land Management, and additionally, Michael, so there's so much vaquero lore about out here too, like in Eastern Oregon and the Nevada area and Idaho, and it's like, well, let's just go see about these places so that I can speak from experience rather than having to rely on what other people say. So there's two things out here. First of all, there's a few different areas, like herd management areas. Palomino Butte, I think, is right here. I if you look at a map, just look at BLM HMAs, you can see it. But we went to see the South Steens HMA, which is not to be confused with different herds, because within the HMA, you have different bunches of horses, obviously, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like an HMA is just one herd. It's an area, it refers to the land. So then the other thing that's here is the corrals for the Oregon wild mustangs. And it's a pretty big facility. I had looked up some of the facilities around the US, and they're different in lots of places, right? There's one there's two. The Nevada pens are, I think, 3 hours south, maybe Reno area. And then there's a Susanville one, a little bit west of that. So they're two, like within 3 or 4 hours south of us as well. Holding pens is what I mean. So corrals is what they call them. And so we drove through the Burns one yesterday because I just wanted to have a little bit of something to talk about today. So last evening we went out to the South Steens HMA area, which took us about an hour to drive there from here. You drive out into the middle of nowhere, ranch land, right? And then you get out of your vehicle, or you drive even a little bit farther onto the BLM land, and then you get out and walk, which was great, you know. But it's so cool to be able to even just walk the terrain, look at the rocks, look at the the vegetation, like, because otherwise, you know me, I want to see it for myself, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny that I've been around all of this for so long, and yet I don't know what happened in the last couple months, but my radar is on to this. I have some theories. We can talk about it later, why this is important to me. But you kill two birds with one stone here, because in Oregon, I'm pretty sure there's 19 HMAs. I know so many things that I didn't know like 2 weeks ago. One of them is the price of horse meat. Did you know that horse meat is 50 cents a pound right now?
Did not know that.
I've been riding horses since I was 12, which is a while ago. Never known the price of horse meat. Bought horses at auction. Never known the price of horse meat. So it's 50 cents a pound right now, I believe. So there's 19 HMAs in Oregon, and one of them is in the Ochocos, which is in the Redmond area. It actually is named something different. The actual HMA is named something different. But that is foresty, pine forest.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you guys that have been to Bend, like just outside of Bend. And but all the rest of them are mostly this kind, which is sagebrush, grass. There's actually a really cool wildlife preserve. Hay everywhere. Debbie and I are eyeballing all the alfalfa and the hay. We're like, well, we both think our souvenir should be a huge bale of gorgeous alfalfa, We'll put one each on the truck. If we can pull it off, that's totally what we're doing. And then I guess there's a couple areas that are more deserty, like alkali flats, But what was cool about being up there yesterday, first of all, the temperature is amazing. It was like 91 degrees, but there's hills. They're not hills, I think. Well, I don't know, rocky things.
Bluffs.
And yeah, bluffs. Yep. So of course you can get in the shadow of one and not be in the full sun, especially towards the end of the day, which was strategic, right? Because I'm not a huge fan of being out in the full sun. Although, what else was I just gonna? Oh, and it's at 10,000 feet, I think, or very close. Like, it is high. It's really interesting. There's cattle out there this year. Last year or the year before, sometime in the recent last few years, there was no water during the drought. Must not have been last year, must have been the year before. And to the point where there's videos of, people trucking in huge water tanks and watering these horses because it was so bad. Well, we're driving through and there's water in the holes, water. So there's cattle out also. Oh my gosh, Michael. So we went to leave yesterday at like 7:30 because, it takes an hour to get back. And I was like, I don't want to leave because the light was changing. And damn it. So this cow, I walked, they're big and fat and beautiful. I don't know what type they are. Black ones with white faces and red ones with white faces. So you guys who know what the hell that is. But a big one. And she's like, she looks at me and I'm like, hey, mama. And she like follows me back to the truck. It was so cute. I'm like, you can come home with me. So right away when we drove out there we came across horses. We went in pretty far, but there were horses. They are fat, not too fat, but they're fat. So that's an interesting thing that for some of you that have probably been following the wild horses and haven't been out there for a while, there's grass for sure. And the other thing I was asking Debbie, because traveling around the country, this is something that I ask people as I go on hikes, is like, what am I watching for? Rattlesnakes, fire ants, scorpions, spiders, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Debbie's like, oh, nothing. I'm like, seriously, you can hike around all of this space and not even worry about it? I did almost end up with a bee in my boot. I'm like, get out. But it was really, really cool. So my story is that we hiked in there and almost like you're just looking everywhere because there's all sorts of different options of where to go to see the different horses. But Debbie really wanted to go to this watering hole so go to my stories, you guys, if you haven't yet, and have some video. And I was looking through all the little media that I got yesterday. I think I'll have a pretty good quick video to show you guys so you have the gist of it. But we walked to the water hole, which of course is at the bottom and flat, and there were maybe 15 horses on the far side. You could see them through the camera, through the binoculars, through your phone to some degree, right? And they're beautiful, bays and duns and just every color you can imagine, gorgeous pintos. Oh, but before we got to the watering hole, we had stopped on the road because there were a couple that were there. There was obviously a pathway, a trail from the watering hole, maybe like, I don't know, 3/4 or half a mile down the way, and across the road, up the hill and over the bluff. So we happened to cross a herd that was clearly crossing. Yeah, so this pinto, this blonde pinto, I'm like, why does it always have to be a light colored one? Stops and comes marching over to me. It looks like a 2-year-old. I'm like, oh, good. Load up that one. Perfect. Bring that one to me. We call him Sunday. And so if there's a way, if anyone knows how to put dibs on a horse, that's the one that I would want. I think it wouldn't be till next year, but that'd be perfect. He'd be a 3-year-old. It's kind of fun to see him out there before they've been freeze branded, before they've been gelded. And he was like, little tiny nose and just a beautiful head, versus on our way out, and I'm jumping around just a little bit, sorry, but on our way out, when we were like, okay, bedtime, let's go, there was this big bay stud, kind of off the road a bit, and he saw us, and the body language is so different, and so we stop, and he's that's not the one you want to get out in front of, so Debbie's like, I want to see what he does just to get out. So she gets out on the other side from where he was and comes around the corner, and right away he's coming up. But it's so different. The little pinto is like, as a stud, and the other one much older. That one was fat. Debbie's like, oh, gelding. Nope, because they're not branded. So if they're not branded, they're not gelded. Oh, fat. Not in a bad way, in a good way, but like legit a little on the chunkier side for sure. So, okay. So anyway, it was very cool and interesting, certainly, to see the different personalities. And when we went, so when we got to that watering hole, it was still full sun down there, and I was itching to get up, just at least into the shade. And then you look up against the bluff, and there's horses all in there, like high, right? Even cattle up there. We hiked up there, so it was pretty steep, and to see the rocks. And there's another plant. I didn't ask Debbie what it was because the sagebrush didn't appear to be blooming to me, but there's another plant that sort of looks like it but has really pretty lavender flowers that you were hiking amongst. And anyway, so it was so cool. And there are a couple babies up there. So we worked our way into the shade was all we were trying to do so that we could at least take some pictures and get out of the full sun. Of course, me, I'm like, I forgot my sunscreen on my arms, you know, stupidity. So, but it was also cool to get to see because you could kind of, it's a great vantage point to start to watch the herds come over the hills down to the watering hole. And so they kind of made their way down and out when we climbed up there. But I found a really nice sitting place. And I wanted to stop walking because it's so loud. And I just wanted to get to where I could just listen. And we all love to hear our horses chewing and talking to each other. But it was really, really interesting to hear their conversations back and forth. There wasn't a lot, but at times they were directing what was going on. And this one dun mare, fat, with a little baby that you'll see on my stories, she turned around, I think because they were probably moving down to the water hole when we went into the shade, so they moved off, but they needed all to come back to the water. So as soon as we settled, they were interested in going back, but they were moving one direction, and then she starts going this way. And it was kind of neat to just see her be confident, because you're looking at a group of horses, of course, and then the direction and the leadership starts to emerge. So in this canyon, you guys picture huge wide open spaces, the mountains in the background, definitely bluffs everywhere, so it's not like it was flat. But and then through the canyon you hear this nicker. It's just a beautiful sound, right? And you could hear it so well, just rumbling through the space. It was not dramatic. It was just a perfect place to hear it. And you see this little wiener, like,
where'd you go?
Kind of think, and then he's looking to the herd, and he's looking to the mom, and then he's like, super cute. Lisa says, what a cool experience. I really want to go someday. Oh yeah, definitely. I recommend it. But okay, so Michael, this is what I would like to get to. So first of all, have you ever gone out to see them? Because I know you've been around a lot of Mustangs. Your dad was really into it for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up riding in Theodore Roosevelt National Park in Medora, North Dakota, and they have wild horses out there with tons of controversy, as they all are, and they're actually trying to pull them out of the park right now because it's not a BLM plot, it's a national park. And so there's people who say they aren't native, you know, it should be the buffalo and the elk out there. So they've created quite a stink, even though I think a really strong percentage of the economy in that area is people coming out to the park to see the wild horses. So they might be shooting themselves in the foot trying to get rid of the wild horses because they aren't native to the grasslands or whatever. But they've been there a heck of a long time and draw quite a crowd of people that are there to photograph and just enjoy watching Mustangs. So I don't know where that sits right now, but there's been all kinds of advocacy and whatnot. But that's really the only group I've seen out in the wild.
And that's hilly and trees.
That would be kind of your classic bluffs, grasslands, washouts, gullies. There's not really any forested area. I mean, down along the rivers, there's trees, more like cottonwoods, but the majority of it is like cedar and brush down the midst of gullies and kind of grasslandy stuff, not like true forests.
And what do those horses look like?
They are not. They're very jumpy in terms of a lot of them are very talented at jumping. I actually got one that my dad now has that jumped out of a 6-foot, actually probably closer to a 7-foot pen. It was coming through the sales barn when they were still, is this again not a BLM deal, and they were selling them. And the guy in there stepped in behind him. He's in this confined area and jumped front end at least over from a standstill the fence and got hung up the back legs. Had to clear out the whole auction place. Anyway, they're very athletic jumpers. We've had a couple here that have just jumped because they felt like jumping. They're not real small, but they're not big horses either. They kind of have some soggy, drafty look to some of them. Lots of color, paints and roans. Yeah, I don't know if that's a good description. Big feet. Kind of, I don't know. I don't know enough about the angles of a jumping horse, but their hind ends don't look as round as a quarter horse can. They look a little bit more angular, maybe like a Lusitano, but super powerful nonetheless. I've been told they're good ranch and rope horses, like they could go all day. I don't know, a couple interesting things. They don't like being in the trees. They want to be where they can see. They will not pass water without trying to take a drink, even if it's a little puddle. They will make the time to take a sip. They can easily get pretty fat. You have to watch them because they conserve their energy. That's kind of the.
It's just interesting because I think the body styles are relevant, and certainly what they look like, what they're suited for. To me, there's a ton of value in considering one of these BLM horses, certainly from Oregon, but kind of keeping track now or seeing around the country. Particularly, I guess I see some of the Nevada horses or the other place that I see pictures and video of these horses. But here's the thing, considering a horse for your life, you know, if they're super healthy, super good feet, gentle minded, which is part of the new information to me, not all, but a lot. And why wouldn't you? If you're not going to show, like if you just want a good using type pleasure horse, why not? Certainly consider those. So I've learned about the TIP program, which is the trainer incentive program. So that's really interesting. And then there's also an adoption incentive program. But I'll take more pictures and video today at the pens. One of the things that's really interesting is it's probably 1/5 the capacity or 1/6 the capacity here. I'll have to ask a little bit more what the numbers are, but it is empty.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it looks like there's maybe a couple hundred horses over there.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, well, this is interesting because, yeah. So once again, you get to drive your butt out there and see what the story is. So they are getting ready to do another gather. But if horses aren't getting adopted out, it doesn't make any difference what gather you're trying to do, right? But I guess that it really has worked to have all these Mustang makeovers and this trainer incentive program, and they are shipping these horses all over the country. So the Oregon Mustangs are going to the east. This whole culture has grown up around these horses, right? Which is partially what the next subject I want to talk about. But let's see. Lisa says, if they're branded, you can show them in Mustangs. Right, so there's Mustang shows now. Mike says, we have a friend who is a professional photographer that has been photographing the horses in the Steens for many years. We have some of their photographs. Oh yeah, it's just beautiful. And I can imagine how it is a photographer's dream, and the horses are so beautiful and really quite, they're not super skittish at all. The ones that we came across were not. If someone's really trying to join the show today, you're gonna have to send me a message, otherwise I'm gonna assume it's a mistake. So okay, so does anyone have any questions about that before we move on?
Well,
So this morning,
I don't know how much you want this to be added, but there are a lot of Mustangs who can become the most gentle-minded horses, as gentle-minded as anything. Just sweet and chill, and nothing really rattles them. And there are the Mustangs that will remain Mustangs their whole life and will go feral on you, just because they're that leery and that sensitive, even with a lot of time. So yes, a Mustang, but also beware of which Mustang. The green person getting green Mustangs so they can grow and learn together is no better than getting the
100% on you. I am not advocating
getting the yearling colt and saying, yeah, we're going to grow up together, and having it just be not a pleasant experience for anyone involved, or maybe not the experience you had in mind for everyone involved. Maybe it was not entirely, yeah. So.
Yes, I am, just to be clear, I am not advocating for any unstarted horse to be your first, second, third, fourth horse. Although, just as a reality check, you do see these teenagers who get a Mustang and an iPhone, and ta-da, YouTube channel, trainer, pro trainer, like all this.
Yeah.
Good for them. Heck yeah, whatever. But I do think it's a testament that there must be a bunch of gentle-minded horses.
Yeah.
And additionally, there's some truth to a clean horse. Clean-ish, but I want to talk about all of that. So it's interesting that this entire culture has popped up. It sort of becomes a breed, which makes me, meaning, even though Mustangs are mutts, what isn't, how intentional does it have to become before it becomes a breed, and how much of a registry does it have to have before it becomes a breed, and what is the point of having a breed? What is the point of having papers? Because we've had the AQHA since the 50s, right? I think.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bureau of Land Management started managing horses, I believe, in 1976. So I guess my question is, so much of this is culture and community, right? We're going to have events, horse shows, play days, makeovers, etc. Mm-hmm. It's the same that we have the Retired Racehorse Project within the thoroughbred world. So that is an interesting contrast to me, or an interesting context to see this evolve over time. To me, I could be wrong, but I'll just say my impression over the last decade is that these horses have gotten better looking. And to me, that means a little bit less clunky, a little bit more rainbow shaped, a little bit less like a battle axe head. It looks more like a using type horse than a cart horse or a draft horse.
No.
To me, I think that just for me personally, my vision of a riding horse is not a draft horse and not a cart horse. Although you have breeds that are quite suited to both, like the Lipizan would be one of them, or the Welsh Cob would be another one. But there's also other breeds that don't look like riding horses to me at all. They look like cart horses, like draft cart horses. So I'm just saying, as they look more refined to me, more like typical riding horses to me. So I don't know if that's the case or not, but like I will take pictures today, because when we buzzed through there yesterday, there are some that look like super well-bred, glorious quarter horses. I'll see, 1 in 50 look like they just look like they are a registered quarter horse. Beautiful. And the colors are amazing. And they do look like the picture of health, which I don't think historically has always been the case. Of course, it's summer. You know, they're slicked out and gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll take more pictures today. Okay. So is there anything else on that comes to mind?
No. I mean, it's interesting you say that they look more appealing to what you would imagine or picture as a quality riding horse now than they did. I don't know that I would even feel like I had a sample size enough to make such a comment, but you've maybe been around more of them in that part of the country. You know, it's been more just kind of hit or miss here or there. I don't know where most of them come. I usually know of the horses out of the park in North Dakota, but other than that, I've never even stopped long enough to listen with where this horse came from, what HMA, or what part of the country. So
yeah, I'm certainly only dialing into that now to some degree, but overall, I think my radar has started to go, oh, why would you bother with a quarter horse if you could have one of these?
mm-hmm.
Seriously, what? I mean, there has to be a reason. Oh, I want a show, or I want a reiner, I want a cutter, or like something that is hyper breed specific. But there's tons of people that I know that have quarter horses because they're gentle minded and they want to just ride.
Mm-hmm.
You can freaking swing a rope and tie something down and cut something out as an amateur with these horses all day long. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with a quarter horse. Of course not. They're fantastic and as much a part of our history as these BLM Mustangs. But I'm just saying, but why though? Which brings me to my next point.
Go ahead.
Because as we have this lore and culture and ideology evolving out of these wild Mustangs, what the hell is the difference between a wild Mustang and a ranch raised quarter horse? Aside from breeding. Meaning, if you run a batch of 2-year-old quarter horses that were bred and raised on a humongous a 500,000 acre ranch, 50,000 acre ranch, let's just say, and you run them into a pen and start them, like gentle them, what the hell is the difference? So we're driving out to these wild horses, right? You have private land with horses on one side. You have BLM land with horses on the other side. So this, oh, I gentled a Mustang. It's so different. You know how many times I've heard that? It's so different, Debbie, because I was just going nuts over it yesterday. You know, oh, it's a whole different world. It's like, but is it really? And this is why, Michael, I'm going to have to do one, because I'm not going to be satisfied until I can speak from experience. I can speak from experience being around the ranch raised, the wild ranch raised colts, because I've been around those at Gary's. Wild. Run through pens into the stock trailer, driven to Gary's, backed up to the round pen, dumped off. Moved from the round pen to the arena, sorted one out, started them, halter broke day one, tied on the high line. I didn't halter break them, tied on the high line. And then I have the experience of peeling those off the high line and walking them to the pasture. Wild AF. Understanding where they need to be and that they need to follow a feel, but not gentle. Wild. And all your spidey senses, like, everything could go wrong right here, but they have it explained to them enough that you can walk them to a pasture, untie the lead rope and gently drop the halter. Untie the halter and gently drop it, and off they go. The only reason you could do that is because Gary roped them earlier in the day, worked them off a last rope and a saddle horse, haltered them one-handed, did some more work with them so they understood how to get united and to follow a feel, tied them on the highland. Like, that is legit all the handling they've had. So explain to me how that is different than these horses that have been run off the range into a stock trailer, then run into the corrals where they are now fenced in, then run through chutes, vaccinated, gelded, freeze branded, and to varying degrees lived in pens for a certain amount of time. How are those more wild than the ranch raised, papered, super well-bred quarter horses? Like, what's the difference? And maybe I'm just saying, I'm not saying I know all the answers, but these are questions that come up in my mind. What's the difference? But we have some comments here, so let's see. Oops.
I only see Lisa's comment.
Okay, so Mike, okay, Peggy. Hi, Peggy. Good morning. Lisa says, Emma, exactly. I've been saying that for a while. Why get an overbred papered horse? Get a Mustang, right? I mean, I don't know. There are reasons, of course. I've always wanted a quarter horse. I've always wanted a horse bred this way. My dream is to do certain things with it, whatever. So my question, Michael, to you, as I'm saying that, are we just saying that generations of domestic breeding applies? But I don't think that's the case, because we do have huge ranches here in the U.S. where horses are raised exactly the same way.
Well, what comes to mind, as much as, well, that being the one side, what kind of exposure this horse had prior to their handling. Like, if they are clean Mustang or ranch raised colts, in that respect, no difference, right? I mean, you could throw a bunch of Tracaners or whatever out in the hills and never handle the mamas and bring them in, and
Tracaners would be a lot more difficult to gentle than quarter horses or Mustangs.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I just
Then
threw,
you have a job.
you know, it would be the same level of clean slate. And then you could, I suppose, like you say, certain breeds are going to make it more difficult or not, but they're, if that's our definition of wild, is just not having been handled, and then that's somehow a magic thing, then they're not unique in that way.
As
Right.
far as I mean,
The other thing that sticks out to me though is if all horses were left to grow on their own, pasture bred, managed minimally in terms of, you know, selective breeding, pulling this stud, putting them with that mare or whatever, but mamas and babies are just out there and they're just rounded up enough to sort them off and say, here, head off onto your new life, little 2-year-old. Within whatever breed or whatever group of horses, you're going to have some that are more looky and some that are more gentle, some that are more like the 2-year-old, some that are more like that stallion that was looking you up like, I don't know about you. Who knows? Maybe that was just the age on him. Yeah. Maybe that's just the age on him. Maybe that's personality. Maybe that's why he's in charge of things out there and didn't get rounded up the first year of his life or what, who knows all that. So, I mean, I've been around some quarter horses, probably not through any fault of their own or strictly a personality tendency factor, are pretty touchy. But some of them were not necessarily through the fault of someone else. They just were extremely touchy horses that require someone who knows what they're doing to get around them. That if kind of left alone for a while or, not really followed through on, can just stay very tight and very looky and very apprehensive, without a lot of training, without a lot of handling, without a lot of consistency that helps them be more settled. Mustangs the same thing. So I think the reason you get that or lore, that
mystique, like
mystique
it has
about the Mustang, there's a good word, yes, is you probably have a higher percentage of Mustangs because they were all, not all, but a majority born, raised, skeptical mother, herd dynamics, leery of people, not handled. A lot of them not brought in until they're older.
That I would say
Not brought into their older thing. And some of them are downright, like, seriously dangerous unless you really know what you're doing. Like, really know what you're doing. Because it can happen so fast. A switch can flip. Not in an unpredictable way, but it just happens so quick. It's like I didn't see that coming. I thought we were good, and then something startled them, where they sort of let down, but it's just so close to the surface, them being tight again. So take 3,000 horses, 3,000 Mustangs, 3,000 quarter horses. A higher percentage of those Mustangs are probably going to be touchy if we just pulled them out of the range at different ages. Then there would be 3,000 quarter horses, a few of them ranch bred, a lot of them homebred, a few of them raised on farms and handled since they were, fairly young and, taken to futurities as to, what percentage of those 3,000 horses are going to be rangy, have some age on them, no exposure to humans before they enter the round corral for someone to work with them, or enter the hands of someone who maybe could use a little bit more experience before getting their hands on them, over against the Mustangs, which, unless they are coming out as a weanling or a yearling, by the time they get two usually isn't so bad, but beyond that, it gets exponentially harder, in my experience, to have an easy transition from, here I'm this horse that's very skeptical of everything because I have zero exposure to any of this, to, okay, now I'm your doggone gentle Mustang. That you might get them there. They might want to be that the whole way along, but there's a lot more to get through than there would be with the 2000, some quarter horses that had that from day one. And
you
then,
you would have to have apples to apples. You would
exactly.
have to have
But I
3,000
think the
ranch raised.
Mustang has that mystique in some sense because the scales are tipped in that way for that group of horses, more so than they are for other breeds.
And I was just, yeah, I think you're 100%. You're exactly.
I've had quarter horses that I said, this is the most Mustangy like quarter horse, most shocky, tight to get, go back to being tight horse that I've worked with in some time. And then, next time you have a Mustang, you're like, this is the most bleh, uninteresting, unenthusiastic horse I've had in a long time. But then I was helping a gal, not this year, but last, out in Washington with a couple Mustangs, and they were aged Mustangs. They're like, I think one had been adopted a couple times and had gone back, and she was gonna give a go at this horse and ended up getting her hurt. And I mean, she was missing some key pieces that I kind of helped her with, and she thought she was good to go with that and was pretty enthusiastic. And at a certain point, she's just like, it's not worth getting hurt over. But that's a horse with a lot of age, failed by
and a lot of experience.
Yeah.
With people.
Yeah. So, but if that's your only experience, and it wasn't her only experience. I mean, she's been around horses all her life and rides horses for the public. But if that's your experience of Mustangs, this is what Mustangs are like. I'm like, yeah, Mustangs are different than other horses then, but that's not apples to apples, like you're saying.
So I have to take care of this request here so I can delete this because it is making me nuts. Okay. Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Here, let's see what Lisa says. I do think the Mustangs are closer to really wild horses, whereas the domestic bred horses, even if they are ranch raised, are of the domestic genes of their parents, if that makes sense. I don't know though, Lisa, because we have sections of the quarter horses that are bred to be bucking stock, bred to be not gentle. So we have.
Well, I don't know that they're bred to be not gentle.
Yeah, I think so. Like raising.
That'd be interesting. We need to talk to someone who breeds bucking stock, because I don't know that they're bred to be not gentle, and I don't know that they're sticking to pure quarter horse lines. I think they do bring in Mustang. They bring in bucks, from my understanding. But it's not even that they're not gentle. They're just like, you watch one of those horses buck the rider off, the flank strap might be just as tight as it was before that rider came up. They just,
I know they learn. Yeah.
And they're like, job's over. And then they like trot right back out the gate. They know the pattern. So I don't know that they're, breeding rank quarter horses, and the fact that they're not gentle. Not that they're trying to have a puppy dog that their kids can be around and a bucking horse, but they're not trying to breed, from what I can tell, just super touchy horses. They're breeding horses that want to buck, which I guess is, in a way, is touchy, but not like I'm leery of you, I can't have you be around me. It's just like they go in and out. They got to be handleable enough to be safe bringing them into the chutes and not. I know we're on a totally different topic here, but
Well, it's interesting though
It's a
because
skill set, right? It's like a horse that can jump. Well, you don't necessarily need the spookiest jumper in the world. You just need one that can jump really high.
yeah, I guess all I'm saying, you're right. And this is a very interesting vein of the discussion because now we're talking about breed characteristics. We're not talking about where they were raised. We're talking about breed characteristics, what has been selected for, what has not been selected for, right? And I'm just saying, I've seen lines of quarter horses and I've seen horses in the pasture. Like one goes bucking around and looks a certain way and the other one is legit bronchi, and the way they buck is different.
Mm-hmm.
The way they leap through the air, the way they kick out their hind legs, the way they jump, it is a different movement than a gentle-minded horse that's bucking. Like it's not even the same movement, really.
Nicole just joined. She can weigh in on the bucking horse part of things.
Oh, yeah, I know. Cool. Oh, and now she's married to a cowboy and lived on an actual ranch. She has tons of experience. She was just telling me she's got a sales photo shoot where she's photographing 70.
What?
You talk about an organizational nightmare. I mean,
70
I would.
babies?
What was that?
2-year-olds or?
I don't know.
Holy cow.
And I won't say.
That's a lot of horses.
They're sales photos, so I
Yeah.
think it will be a set for each and every one. That's so many to try to keep track of.
Yeah,
And
that must
that's
be
a lot
a
of
production sale where they all have their picture in the catalog.
Go, Nicole. I'm so proud of her, proud to be her friend. Remember when we were all sleeping in tents like 10 years ago? Oh my gosh. So fun to think about. So anyways, what I think that's a really good point, and from Lisa as well, because then the question is, are we talking about the American Mustang being special or unique because of the genetic selection, which clearly has been affected by humans, certainly in this area, because of the management, you know, or are we talking about circumstance of them growing up wild? Because I would say what we need to do then, if that's the case, is we need to have a category called BLM Mustangs and not wild horses, because a wild horse is a adjective, right? I mean, this is where were they raised, how do they operate, not what is the genetic selection.
Yeah, because then you get into, well, they're not wild, they're feral. And then what is the definition of feral? Is that different? Because now they are fenced in intentionally.
These guys are essentially fenced in by water and roads and cattle guards and other ranches fences. I mean, they're not.
But they fenced in that someone still owns them. They didn't escape and get away and go rogue, right?
And the other thing that I think of when I think of ranch raised colts, now this is not the case with every ranch, but if they are getting fed in the winter, if they are getting fed throughout the year, then absolutely that is different than horses that are fending for themselves 365, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
They must feel different. But the thing that and I was out there yesterday, thinking of how amazing it is to be watching these horses in the wild. And I'm sure that folks that work and live on big, huge ranches and watch these, they're like, you are such a city slicker. Ah.
Oh.
Wow, I'm out on these hundreds of acres, like looking at these loose horses. It's like, and it's a special thing for sure. But being out on a legacy ranch, watching wild quarter horses is probably a very similar experience. I would think. I don't know. Think about.
Yeah, because especially like on the legacy ranch, there's the ranch mama or the young horse crazy girl that's grown up on her grandfather's knee, just knowing the breeding. The horse has been around him and just loves them, knows every one of them, knows the breeding like the back of their, it's just knows the horse before she's ever been near the horse. And it's the same thing. People have just been in these Mustangs' lives, photographing them, studying them, being around them at a distance or whatever distance. Like you said, some of them are not. I mean, you can get in pretty close to where they're not scared of you. They're pretty gentle, where they can know this one was this descendant of this line and this stallion was with this band, and they could trace the whole lineage of how these horses are related, not having had any hands in the pairings at all, but they know what mares have been bred by what stallion and what year and all that. So yeah, I mean, it's all just in who loves them.
Yeah, and if you think about it in terms of like this particular HMA, where I wonder how many photographers are out here every year hiking around with big cameras, big or small, putting up the tripods. Like, you wonder how many humans these horses have honestly interacted with, and then generation after generation. That little pinto, does he even count as a wild horse? If I'd had a little more time, he would have walked right up to me. Put him in a pen.
Good thing you didn't have more time. You don't need more horses.
You're not allowed to just take him off the land. I read the rules.
You read the rules? You left your trailer at home.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I shouldn't even mention this because I'm so sad. So there is a horse that I would go get next week if I could. It's a mule. Oh my gosh. The most beautiful yearling mule. And she's down in California. Who occurred in nature. There's three of them. But mules are as rare as hen's teeth, really, in this country right now. And super popular. You cannot buy a broke mule for less than $10,000 right now. She's freaking perfect. She is I want to do a mule. I would love to check off the stupid wild horse list. And she's perfect. Oh, but I just know it's just going to be, the price is going to go through the roof. And it's not something that I'm going to be paying thousands of dollars for a wild mule, not at this point. But if I could snag her for a few $100, I'd go get her for sure. She's perfect. I named her Feather. It's not going to happen. I'll tell you what right now. The auction starts on the 31st and goes, and now that I've said it, someone else is even gonna, but damn it. It would have been perfect. Isn't that interesting that it did occur in nature though?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You said there's only
this never happens. Like,
You said there's three currently, or three known cases?
There are three that are going to be auctioned off next week.
If there's three right now, it can't be that unheard of.
Yeah, I'll have to look into it more, but yeah, she's perfect. She is perfect. Not allowed to just go down and she moves perfectly. She's little. Oh, well.
Where did you see her? Is there like a video of it?
Yeah, so if you go to the BLM website, you can go to the online corral. They really do have all sorts of clever ways of placing these horses now, which is great, obviously. These animals that are, all of folks' efforts, clearly, over the last decade to make these horses more popular, more interesting to people and adopt is working. Like, as far as I can tell, that's absolutely a real thing. And it's so cool. Folks are going to think I'm being derisive about this whole thing. And I really am also captivated with the lore and the mystique and the thought that we have wild horses in the United States, and you could capture one and gentle one and all of this. This is beautiful, and they're out in these beautiful places. They look beautiful, but again, I've been on ranches, like let's just say Jim's ranch, the OW, driving out there for Nicole's wedding last year. It could not be more beautiful, and it's certainly as beautiful as out here for sure. And it's 50,000 acres spanning 2 states, and there's horses out there. Like, okay, what are we really saying they're different? You know, but here is the interesting thing to me that is worth talking about as a separate topic, not good or bad or what's better or anything like that, but just there's an element of people keep talking about the activity of gentling a horse. And it seems to go, of course, Pat Pirelli, Michael and I were both Pirelli students many years ago, used to talk about the difference between taming and training. And then in Buck Brannaman land, and what we've learned from him, and of course the culture that comes up out of the cowboy culture and out of the Ray Hunt and Tom Dorrance's student body, you have the word gentle, which is different than gentling. And right, I think we should talk about that, Michael, because maybe some people don't understand that, and it's really interesting for I wanted to talk to you about it just because I don't quite have it straight in my mind where I could package it in a couple sentences. But I do think that clearly dipping my toes into the Mustang culture, as far as I can tell, they refer to gentling a Mustang as like getting it so you can touch it and halter it. I mean, if you're in the TIP program, which is a trainer incentive program hosted or put on through the Mustang Heritage Foundation, which you can look up online, you basically can get paid $1,000 to, and your requirements are within 100 days. 100 days you have to get it to where you can touch it, halter it, pick up all its feet, and get it to go in the trailer. Mm-hmm. And as far as I can tell, they're talking, that is referred to as gentling a Mustang. Mm-hmm. So you want to try to package what we call a gentle horse, which is far, far different than what that definition is.
Yeah.
And side note, I'm not saying that our definition is any morally better or any. It's just interesting that there's different definitions. Yeah, just like a colt to someone means a baby horse, you know, but to us, yes, it means a baby male horse, but it also denotes a certain level of training. So this is just learning the vernacular.
Yeah, I mean, when Pat would say horse taming versus horse training, I think it was getting at more the idea of the way you talk about gentling a Mustang being the bare minimum of getting around it, and to where you could, you know, kind of touch it all over, groom it, halter it.
I don't think touching it all over is a thing.
Well, depends on how far you want to go with your gentling. Right?
But I'm just saying the bare minimum, yeah, of like a gentled Mustang. I don't think as far as I can tell, yeah, you can pick up all 4 feet. But
well, I will say this. I don't know if I ever sent you this. Mike and I will occasionally just waste an evening watching YouTube videos, and oh my gosh, I don't think I'll try to find it again and share it with you. I won't share it with all of you, but I will send it to Emma. It was the most horrific example of someone working with a horse and trying to make progress. It was just unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. And it was a tip certified trainer. Like that was part of his tag. I'm like, oh man, if this is supposed to be getting us somewhere, you know, and I'm not saying that's tip certified trainers are all like that, but this one in particular was like, you've got to be kidding me. You are making things so much worse, and it's just horrible. So yeah, if that's like, I have a rope on this horse and it's flying around me like a kite, but eventually I'm going to get speed picked up once or twice, and then I'm going to, you know, try to find a home with someone who's going to get hurt by it because I actually made things worse. That's a totally different deal. But like if my dad enjoys working with these horses, and he's the horses out of the park in North Dakota, and he's helped a few people with them, and in his mind, you know, his taming process or gentling, or I don't know what words he would use necessarily, would be to where you could kind of handle them all over them and do your basic care. It would be certainly way more thorough than the idiot in the video that I'm referencing, but you know, and probably maybe more thorough than tip trainers who are just like, yeah, I'm getting the very bare basic minimum so you can handle this horse and get around. He wants them to be comfortable petting them all over and scratching them and grooming them up and farrier and vet things and things like that. So I don't know. Everyone's got their own standard to what they mean when you hear the word gentle or tame. Over against when we say, when Buck references a gentle horse, I mean, we're talking a horse that has some experience, that is reliably quiet, that is quiet-minded, physically obedient in the rectangle, just safe for someone who doesn't really know what they're doing.
And this bears exploring, I think, over many, you know, over the next years, because when Buck just said this, who was he saying this to? You guys that have been around over the, I think he said it in Dayton or something for the cold start. Like it was like, I don't remember who, or it could have been at Boring talking to somebody who was training horses for a living. He was basically what he said was, or maybe he said it on the show. Nobody really cares if you can turn your horse around fast. I think because someone was like, oh, how do you, you know, because Boozy's turning around really fast now. And it's like, oh, how do you do that? And I haven't asked him this, but I bet he's going to be pretty reticent to start doing it now that people are hooked on, or continue doing it as people are hooked on, fixated on this. And so his comment, and Buck, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that he was like, look, yes, you need to get him turning around, because that is a maneuver that you need to have to keep the horse balanced, to get the horse balanced, to rebalance the horse, to make sure that he's free on all 4 feet. But speeding up the turn is not at all as valuable as getting them gentle. Like, and he kept emphasizing that, and we've heard that throughout the years. And so this little Arab, Remy, that I have now, is clearly the result of many, many, many generations of breeding a gentle-minded horse. He's gentle-minded. He's very tame. He's very friendly. But I'm telling you, I touched him with the flag, and I was one of the first people to do anything with this horse, and there's lots of video of it at Horsemanship Insider, but he has been gone for a year and a half. I don't think that this is anything that the gal put into him. I just think it was never checked out thoroughly. Additionally, he was a bit dull out, which, side note, I'm not being critical. I've done that so many times. Michael, reading through some of these ads, like, because I've really spent a lot of time in the horse market lately. Fully desensitized. Halter broke, trailer loading, fully desensitized. And I just think, are you guys reading what you wrote? Like, is that what you mean? Fully desensitized? What the hell? Anyway, this has nothing to do with this gal. But my point is, really picking up all 4 feet to trim his feet, like he's loose. right? Like what I mean is he's turned loose, stands on 3 legs. He is tame, very friendly, but so not only like Michael, I was petting him all down the hind legs, petting him on the inside of the hind legs, changed direction and poked him because I was getting more and more careless, poked him in the flank with the flag, leapt in the air, bucking over his head. I had my lead rope wrapped, so of course I opened my hand. Thank God, love that technique, right? He ended up at the round pen fence, no joke. So of course I'm like, oh, interesting, very interesting. This is why we do it, make sure. So then I run my flag kind of under his tail, but not jammed up. He clamped that thing down, peeing down his leg, bucking over his head. So all I'm saying is that horse gentle?
Mm-hmm.
So, side note, I was also thinking how people can even have a prayer of getting these horses gentle without using a lasso rope. Because how can you work all around the horse? You're stuck. If you're trying to tame a wild Mustang or gentle a wild Mustang, and you can't use a lasso rope and you don't have a saddle horse, you're really stuck in the
Wherever
90,
they be.
yeah, like from head on to the sides, right?
Yeah.
And Remy, I guess all I'm saying is, of course, swing the last rope. I'm on foot, but just over the saddle, up under his tail. And what he needed to know is moving forward and relaxing was the answer. It didn't take him long. But if you didn't have that technique, because you can't continue to do, first of all, he was kicking the flag a couple times. I would check to see if it was just that he was surprised. No. And that flag went flying 60 feet. And if he was less tame or gentle, he could have kicked my brains out, jackknifed and kicked my brains out. I had enough of a feel on the lead rope, but I wouldn't have been as careless if it was a wild horse. But you really shouldn't be careless, ideally, But I was, anyway. My point is, it was totally fixable, not a huge deal, knowing the curriculum, knowing the technique. But the question, my point is, was that horse gentle? And you still can rope his feet. I need to rope his hind feet. I don't love where I have to tie him. I think I'm just going to have Kip hang on to him for me. It won't take long. It's not a big deal. I'm not loving my round pen setup I think he's going to be a little tiny bit upset to do it loose right now, but it won't take more than 1 or 2 sessions, and that'll be checked off the list, I think. But is he gentle? When I get my rope down after riding him, like I can kind of do it, but he was not okay with it. Not even close to okay with it. And
so there's gentle, the 2 phrases you've used, and I think generally how we use them would be gentle-minded and gentle. And gentle-minded
and gentled.
Gentled we don't use as much, but
we don't use it.
Yeah, we don't much, but that's how like a tip trainer might use it, or my dad, or Pat Pirelli's idea of taming the horse over against training it might have that gentled element. So a gentle-minded horse is one that I think, similar to Remy, just seems like, okay, they want to try to get along. They're not real snaky or suspicious or, kind of aggressive or defensive, or they just kind of feel sort of open-minded and quiet, leading you to assume, or maybe not assume, one could easily assume that they're just going to be that way about everything. And I think it is safe to assume, okay, this horse might have it easier than some of these others at getting to being gentle, but that doesn't mean it's going to be a no-brainer process, nothing's going to happen. That's why it is gentle-minded versus the horse that has gone through the whole process, whether they started out gentle-minded or started out really looky or really skeptical or really aggressive, on the fight because of what they'd experienced a year ago. Getting them to the gentle process, no matter where they started, and having them be a gentle horse involves or implies a certain level of education. Certainly not just ground skills, but riding, to where someone with not as much experience, that horse could fill in for them, even if at one point they couldn't fill in for them. They're safe in all kinds of situations. They've been handled all over, walking, trotting, ropes all over them, not just I can stand here and let me touch you, or let you touch me. I think that's when those terms are used, that's I guess what comes to my mind. Similar.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, there's so much to talk about in regards to that, because yes, I want to be, before we have to be done today, I would also like to touch on herd bound, which we talked a lot about last week, because I bet you that's 90% of the deal here. Once again, I better do a couple of these just so that I can speak from experience.
90% of the deal where?
Gentling these horses. Because people keep emphasizing, are they letting you touch them? Are they letting you touch them? But these horses, again, this baby horse comes walking right up to me, this 2-year-old, yesterday, and of course he's more gentle-minded than that stud who's God knows how old, and has been running the show forever. That's just normal. That's going to happen with any breeding, for sure. Mm-hmm. And worse to handle if they have that personality and that we're let run the show and all of those things, in captivity, that is going to be 1,000 times worse usually. But then watching these horses, and like I said, I'm going to get some video and be able to talk about it more today, but there's 50 in a pen, or 70 in a pen, or 40 in a pen, or something like that. And these horses and the pens are not huge, 100 by 200, something like that. I'll ask a lot more questions, but they're not jumping out. They're all fine with each other. So, I guess I'm just saying that it depends on how we use the words, but if we're talking about gentling a Mustang, is basically the definition is something to do with you being able to touch them. Because, folks you've seen it on YouTube too, there's an element of people just putting halters on them, and flat halters in a lot of cases, and letting these 22-foot lines just drag. Mm-hmm. And it's what is intellectually, what is the horse learning? But and then we also hear about folks that have horses that have been gentled but are herd bound, and then I can only imagine how that is such a factor, as always.
Yeah, you'd have to say, well, how much, to what degree does being herd bound negate what you would consider otherwise they're having been
all of it, right?
Gentle, right? Yeah. How gentle are they really? But if we're talking the gentling a horse, or taming a horse, or getting them off to where they're set up for someone to have success with them, in my experience, a touchy horse that has a hard time with that sort of process, the initial end of the gentling, or just turning loose to what we would even say is the beginning of the groundwork, is not usually a case of them being herd bound. It's a case of them being afraid of you, right? So like the few horses that pop in my mind as ones, quarter horse or Mustang, that were pretty sketchy for a longer period of time. It was their self-preservation that kicked in, not in the sense of I need to get back with my buddies, but I am not sure that I am safe you being here doing whatever it is you're doing, trying to touch me there, trying to put a saddle on me here, getting on my back, you know, approaching me in the pasture. It's not I'm a wolf and I'm going to try to get away from you, you know, because it's something sneaky that I've learned to do. It's legitimately I'm here going, I haven't seen you in a few days, or I haven't seen you in a couple months because someone else has been working with it, and now I'm guarded against you. That's not a I'm herd bound, I need to be with my buddies. That's I'm afraid of you. And to me, that speaks more to the gentling, the way that people more talk about gentling, that makes that difficult. Probably not a real gentle-minded horse if that's the way they are, but that's what's going to draw out getting that horse gentled as much as, but different from the horse that's herd bound. So I don't see things generally being, in my experience, difficult to gentle because they are herd bound. Those that have been difficult to gentle is because they are leery of the human interaction.
I wasn't thinking that it would make them more difficult, just that it is a factor that I feel like people don't talk about herd bound enough in all, like across all disciplines. The whole discussion about horses, horsemanship, horse training, all of that, I don't think that gets enough talked about. But what you're saying makes total sense, because once again, Remy was not herd bound, had nothing to do with him being terrified to feel that around his heart. Like his self-preservation was like, and that didn't have anything to do
with Jody's horse. Jody just commented, Indy is far from herd bound, but distrusted humans. She can be in the pasture alone and not care at all. Mm-hmm. And so, Indy would be one of those horses on the list of pretty key examples, like not at all concerned about that, but very distrustful.
So I was thinking about Indy a lot yesterday, just trying to match up my tiny little experience with her,
Indy.
Yeah, her. What was her history? I should have asked you, Jody. I just didn't have time to, like, where are you her first? Who gentled her?
I don't know that I even know for sure. I know I'm sure Jody told me a while ago, but
yeah. So Jody, like, did you get her straight out of the pens, or where did she come from? Because when what I'm getting at is how much is that her natural genetics being difficult, or my understanding is just a little bit spooky, a little bit distrustful. It's funny because I didn't spend that much time with her, but I didn't realize it was distrustful of humans. I thought maybe she was just a bit spooky of external things. Being a, care at all. Yeah.
She did not. She kind of picks a very quiet, warm sort of person that she feels very safe with before she would show any, like, oh, I'm interested in you. Otherwise, it's like, I'm cool over here, you're cool over there. Like, don't bother me until, like, I don't know though. She's kind of interesting though. She would nicker to you as you go up, but then when you get closer, she'd be like, I don't know. And then I also told Jody, like, when you can spend enough time with her, she could get just doggone gentle, but she needed to have that regular, we're friends, kind of keep repeating. You don't need to be worried about any of this. Keep the exposure. We're out doing stuff all the time. You're going to go through things that are maybe a little stressful and you're going to live through it. But if it's not, over and over and over again, she's so quick to go, I haven't seen any of this for a while. Or you're kind of coming in here assuming we're all still buddies, but I haven't seen you in a couple months because Jody's been riding her and I haven't interacted with her. Jody asked me to go catch her for the fair or whatever. You can't just march out there and go, all right, let's go to the fair. You have to like kind of feel of her differently than you might a horse that's more innately gentle-minded. So
I'd just be super curious, Jody. Like,
yeah.
Of course, you guys can tell. My curiosity is it because she is a Mustang, or because that is her personality?
She said her Coggins had the Kansas Correctional Industry on it, but I don't know if she failed that program or not. The BLM didn't tell me.
So it's impossible to know. Yeah. And Lisa, it was just commenting on Jake being herd bound, her horse, who I raised, who was Lil's baby, and talk about dog gentle. I did everything. We handled that horse. He was born broke, so to speak, but he is a very naturally herd, and a zillion years of paint breeding. Yes, he was crossed with the thoroughbred, my horse, but I mean, you can't get any more gentle in the quarter horse land than a paint. That's all they were bred for, is being dog gentle, So, but herd bound and beside himself. Now, Lisa has figured out how to deal with that, but naturally, dangerous because of that. And he didn't need a herd. Lisa, did you get that little meme that I shared with you? Oh my gosh. He and Jake, the two Jake and Jack, ratters. They would crawl through fences together. They would just do anything together. End up at the neighbors, The two sorrel horses are over here. And as soon as we separated them and Lisa adopted, they were all fine in the fences. But the two of them together, disaster. Just terrible. Rotten things. Okay, so that's really interesting, Jody, for sure. Lisa said, oh yeah, Jake is certainly dog gentle, but he makes a new BFF in the blink of an eye. Yeah, I think that's a very good example, Lisa, of the polar opposite of a wild Mustang. A young tip trainer had her for 6 months before I adopted her, so she had some gentling. That's a can of worms. Don't get me started. And Lisa says, naughty boys. Oh God, Jake and Jack. They're such an interesting example of behaviors occurring when the two of them were together and 100% disappearing when they're separated. But anyway, Jody, that's really, really interesting. Mm-hmm.
Which is, it's quite interesting because leaving aside some of the quarter horses that kind of popped to mind on my list of, that was a horse that you kind of had to prove it to him over and over and over and over and over. And then you don't prove it to him for a stretch of time, and then you have to come back and you have to assure him again and again, we're going to be okay. Leaving aside the quarter horses, which, well, pretty much all but one of those, I didn't really know what had happened. There was probably shit that went down with that horse regarding saddling or whatever it might be beforehand. I even have a quarter horse now that's like, took a while to get through some stuff, and it was like, this shouldn't be a big deal, but it was going to be a big deal over and over and over until it wasn't. It's a stupid way to say things, but like, if you didn't finish the job, like, you're just making it worse. You're just giving more negative experiences. Anyway, Indy, my dad's horse, a couple other Mustangs I've worked with over the years that kind of jumped to mind. All of them, now knowing this about Indy, had some prior, not just straight off the range, straight out of the pens, minimal interaction with humans, had some gentling that probably drove deeper, their tendency to kind of go internal and be scared. So, and some of them just by virtue of maybe coming out of the off the range when they're a little bit older and probably didn't take near as much. But yeah,
I bet age. So
age is a big factor, but I would also say probably the bigger factor is their initial experiences, their initial.
and neither of those, yeah, and neither of those two things are breeding.
Yeah.
And okay, so you guys, before we wrap it up, I certainly want to take just a quick second to acknowledge everyone who has worked so hard to solve this problem of us having 60,000 extra horses than our country can handle on rangelands. And it is absolutely incredible the amount of people and time and just intellectual understanding. I mean, you think about folks from the people that are tip trainers that have very little knowledge and are pouring their hearts out into this, or organizations that have come up with the extreme Mustang makeovers and put on these shows and work long hours. And I mean, the amount of love and care that has put into taking care of our wild horses in this country, however we want to say, yeah, let's just say the wild horses, the native horses, that is extraordinary. I want to acknowledge how impressed I am with that. I think that I guess it'll take me a little bit longer to put my finger on why it's so important to decouple gentle horse training, horse development from the genetics of being an American wild Mustang. The reason that's important is deep. And Michael, can you put words? I think it's worth decoupling those two, because they are, to whatever degree they should be decoupled, because I feel like it could be a dead end. And especially as this is becoming a bigger and bigger culture, these events are getting more and more popular. There's so many folks involved. It's amazing. But just to let the marrying of like a special way of doing things, or that the horsemanship is somehow different because these horses were born and raised in the wild for generations, I don't know about that. I think it's valuable to separate them, because it will provide a deeper understanding probably of both sides of the, or both sides of the coin, both components. That's what I'm saying. Make any sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think you do have the factor that some of the allure or the lore feeds on the untamable Mustang, or the, you know, it probably doesn't serve the horses necessarily, but that is part of the appeal, I'm sure, for some, is the idea that this horse is other than, you know, the range raised quarter horses that are, you know, this is a Mustang. It's challenging because it's a Mustang, but yet at the same time, on the other side of their mouth, they want it to be a gentle horse because they only really want a gentle horse.
Yeah, and you know what else? I have had the pleasure and just some folks that have done hundreds of Mustangs over the last 20 years have taken time. I have to give a shout out to Lisa Sink, who's taken on with me. But and I'm super interested to talk to more of you. She straight up says they're way easier. I would never. she's strict. She goes, I have no interest in domestic horses comparatively because everything's harder because you're dealing with you're weeding through all the garbage that they've learned versus something that's clean. It's clean.
Yeah.
And from my personal experience, and I loved my wheelhouse has been horses that are unclean, and I love that. I don't think I'll give that up. But there's a dangerous element there as well, because it's very unpredictable what they were taught. And that can be very ingrained as well, and super freaking dangerous. And unexpected. That's the thing, as some of these wild horses, because shouldn't they be predictable in the sense that they're a horse, a clean horse?
Mm-hmm.
They weren't randomly taught to do bizarre things in response to some stimuli. They shouldn't be doing bizarre things. If they are truly generational wild BLM horses, they shouldn't have weird things put in them. They should be
except
horses.
it doesn't matter what your species. Try taming a buck that's been wild for 6 years versus a little fawn, or Lisa mentioned bobcat earlier. I mean, pick a wild animal and try taming it when it's a baby versus when it's got some age on it and has run for its life a few times.
For sure. By the way, my buck is growing a beautiful set of antlers, and I really wish he was not as tame. I was in the round pen the other night.
No, go ahead.
Oh, and he's cantering up the hill like da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da, and I'm looking at him, and his ears are flopping, and he goes canter walk, marches into the arena. I'm like, please don't, because they're bringing fleas into my arena, and I keep having to spray it. I don't know what to do. I mean, he's so beautiful and so gentle for a deer. I'm like, okay, so Jody says, the lore is interesting. The reaction I would get from telling people I have a Mustang versus my Arabian was very different. Surprising. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? Emily? Is Emily, right?
No.
Isn't the round...
Faith.
Oh, Faith. Absolutely. That's the other thing. That's the other thing that just doesn't seem to get talked about. It's like, once again, the quarter horses, now, okay, genetics, we know that, but the quarter horses that are ranch raised for generations since the 50s on humongous ranches are rounded up through chutes, put in trailers, and dumped off in the round pen. Those horses are more clean than the BLM ones that have lived in a pen for a year, or, been freeze branded and tagged and like all this stuff. I mean, I don't know, which is okay. I'm not trying to take away the experience. I'm just saying, let's be real.
Oh, Tamara.
Oh,
sorry.
Tamara, sorry.
Oh, yeah, Faith is Oak Creek Equine. I'm sorry.
Kip needs to do
My bad.
something. No. But, I mean, on the other end, dang. I mean, yeah. I don't think I could handle him shooting him. Maybe. If it gets down to having to spray that arena every month. Frustrating. Anyways, well, so what have we talked about, Michael? Do the roundup since it's 8, and I want to get over there to the pens before the sun is too high. And I have to buy Debbie some...
Oh, go ahead. We talked about genetics, difference between gentling, being gentle-minded, and having a gentle horse. Talked about a horse being clean or not clean in terms of their exposure, positive or negative experiences with humans.
And that could be just photographers traipsing in and out year after year, generation after generation.
What the whole bringing them in off the range through the chutes into the arena or into a holding pen or into a round corral or what all that contributes. What does that do to whether they're clean or not?
And how it's done, because I've heard that. People have told me that. The
Yeah.
difference even here between the speed at which they move the horses around has changed. Like it's slowed down, supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
Like just the speed at which they expect them to move from A to B pens to this has really affected their trainability.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
Julie says, plant a garden. That'll make you want to shoot the buck and eat him. No. That Resistol has worked on my roses, but I did spray it up in the arena too, and that little guy, he was making me so crazy because here I am having this, the sun is, gone down. It's a beautiful evening. Remy has come through to the other side of this whole thing, and it's just a beautiful night, and here's this beautiful buck cantering up the hill, and I'm like, 15 feet away, and I'm like, yay.
Yay.
Even though I should be like, kinship with all things,
Kinship, please.
I need to clicker train him into staying out. That would be a fun project. I bet I could do it. That'd be fun. Good morning, Flora. Well, you missed a good discussion. I wish you would listen to this entire show because you would be very interesting to weigh in. We're talking about, I'm out here adventuring with the wild Mustang. So we're talking about the difference between BLM horses and ranch raised quarter horses on big, huge spaces that haven't been touched, basically, and lots of other things. So, and herd boundness, we talked about how much herd boundness is a factor, and we talked about how much we appreciate people that have taken care of these horses and are contributing to the lore, because you know what? This is the thing that I find truly the most exciting. And I do also think, Debbie and I were talking about this on our drive, I think this is part of what has really piqued my interest is, and this wipes the slate clean of any negative impact as far as I can tell. I think it's getting more people interested in horses and excited about having horses and interacting with horses, and there's a community around it and a support group. And of course it's not perfect, nothing is perfect, but if this is a factor in sparking horse lovers, I'm in.
Nope. Okay.
Well, it's 8:15 almost.
All right. I should probably go.
Anything else, though, that comes to mind before we forget? Because, oh my gosh, Michael, Katniss. We got to talk about Katniss, but